Welcome back. Joining us for the next session is Tony Donofrio. Good morning to South Carolina, Tony.
Hello, pleasure to be with all of you.
And welcome to Kuble CONF 2020. You are a retail influencer and a close observer of the retail market, particularly also related to live streaming and China's role in the live streaming and retail landscape. That's the topic of your presentation. For the audience, of course, continue to ask questions, send comments. I'm collecting everything for the discussion afterwards with Tony, but for now, I hand over to you.
Thank you very much, Christoph, and pleasure to be with all of you in Europe, in Asia, and also for some of you from North America. Because of these types of live streams, we are indeed global, and we're able to share all this knowledge and all this information with each other. So my presentation is going to be slightly different. It will be focused on the retail industry and where the retail industry is going. So let me take you through the agenda. This is actually a presentation that I've continuously updated, and you're actually looking at the latest version, and I've delivered this presentation to all kinds of cities around the world in terms of the state and the direction of the retail industry. This morning, because of this audience, or this afternoon for you, I'm actually talking in terms of how live streaming fits into a retail is going. So these are the agenda items. I will speak to the size of the retail industry and where it was going, what happened to COVID-19 to retail, how we are recovering, what the transformation speed that we're going through because of digital. Then I'll dwell a little bit into China being the laboratory of retail, and specifically to what the trends are there in terms of live streaming. And then I will speak to the post-COVID-19 future of retail in terms of how all these digital trends are converging, including live streaming, to take us to the next level. And this audience is extremely important because you are digital savvy, you're listening to this type of information, and you are an important set of leaders that will shape where the industry goes next, including in retail. So let's dive in. So at a high level, let me talk about where we are in terms of the economies around the world. This is actually a very, very challenging year. Everybody's experiences, actually the most pain this year in terms of gross domestic product will be felt in the Eurozone, followed by the advanced economies in general and the United States. And as you can see, we are all looking forward to 2021, where the projections right now are to be positive again. But very interesting on this chart is China. China, even with Corona and COVID-19, will actually have positive GDP growth this year, and will then lead the world next year in terms of growth. And one of the reasons I put up this chart is digital transformation. It's one of the reasons China has turned around their economy, and we'll talk a little bit about that during this presentation. So let's delve a little bit into what the world has in retail, which is really a $30 trillion economy worldwide, and the wake-up call we just went through because of Corona. So prior to COVID-19, we were all on a nice growth curve. We were going to reach 30 trillion by 2023. The world was going to grow at 4.5%. All the regions were going to grow in 2020 and in 2021, with Western Europe being the laggard. And actually, the anticipation was that Western Europe was going to be hardest hit, but there's actually some interesting trends in Western Europe that we'll talk about, but everybody was going to be great. And as you can see, for some regions, 2020 and 2021 were going to be great years, especially again in Asia, which leads the world in terms of retail growth. But again, in that part of the world, it's already come back, and we'll talk about that. So this was prior to COVID-19. Here's what happened to retail during COVID-19. So the current forecast globally retail will lose $1.6 trillion in economic activity versus the previous forecast. Now, it's not all evenly distributed. It's actually the haves and the have-nots. So the haves are the food, drug, convenience, and mass merchandisers. They are going to do extremely well. They're going to continue to grow in 2020. The have-nots are general merchandise, which will lose $1 trillion this year. Hospitality, which is restaurants and bars, $824 billion. For this audience, if you look at Europe, again, you'll see similar kind of trends, 49 billion plus in the food, drug, and convenience and mass, and then a substantial decline in all the other sectors. And if you look at it by country, again, you can see the pain being felt primarily in apparel, primarily in restaurants, so primarily in soft goods, and primarily in the apparel space. And then there's a whole sector called the department store, which was struggling, which is actually, at least in the United States, that struggle has actually been accelerated. One of the challenges that Europe has, that Europe is one of the top tourist destinations. So 6 out of the countries listed here are heavy tourist destination. And like me, I was supposed to be in Europe at least 2 to 3 times this year, and I'm actually blocked, and I'm not there. In fact, I was supposed to be there this month and also in March and in the summer, and none of that has happened. So tourists being blocked, or even business people being blocked, is having an impact. And you can see again across all the countries, the food sector and the discount and convenience and mass are doing well, except in France, and then general merchandise and hospitality having a terrible year. Just to give you a little bit, because there are some people that might be from the United States, this will have a severe impact in terms of resetting retail. So the current projections are that in the United States, 443,000 stores will close. The majority of those will be small chains, so 1-store companies, 2 to 9-store companies, but even very large companies will close. So 1,000 stores or plus, there'll be 24,000 stores that will close. Now that's actually a trend that was already taking place in the United States. But as part of that trend, we must understand the pain that COVID-19 has caused. So for example, I call this the wealth transfer. Because of Corona, $125 billion was transferred from general merchandise and hospitality, which were forced to close, to food and drug, which remained open. Worldwide, that number is 285 billion. They even much more pain, and you just saw it on the other chart, is in North America, the smaller retailers are the ones that are getting hit the hardest. They actually have a pain of 250 billion because they were forced to close while many of the larger companies were allowed to stay open. One of the challenges in North America, it is overstored. So the trend of closing stores was already taking place. This is a chart that looks at per capita per square feet. And as you can see, North America has the highest. So we have too many stores, and we actually opened even too many malls during the 1970s. So we were already closing stores prior to COVID-19. COVID-19, just like everything else, has accelerated that trend in terms of closures, in terms of where retail goes next in the United States, and it is causing pain. Now, COVID-19 has also accelerated e-commerce worldwide, and what does that look like? And I'm actually going to start in China, because again, I consider China really the digital laboratory for transformation when retail goes next. Just look at this chart. For example, they are the world's #1 e-commerce market. So in 2019, 1.5 trillion in e-commerce was taking place. As you can also see on this chart, and we'll talk about this more, 129 billion in 2020 will be from live streaming. So live streaming now is a very substantial business. Just in the last 3 years, it grew from almost nothing. It grew 453% to, again, 129 billion. As you can see from the chart below, e-commerce will continue to take a larger share of the overall, but it's coming into a market that's highly digitally developed. In China, for example, 800 million people use mobile pay in the first half of this year. Social commerce is already at, so this is commerce through social media, is already at 243 billion. In the United States, we like to talk about how great Amazon Go and what a great that concept that is. We have about 12. There are hundreds already open in China of these Amazon Go's where the consumers can walk in, basically scan and go and not talk to anyone. And then my final example, one of my favorite, is Alibaba Singles Day. So in one 24-hour period, they generated 38 billion versus 28 billion for the 4-day weekend in the United States. So it gives you an idea of the power. And a lot of this is driven through digital transformation, and live streaming is one of the fast growing areas in China that's actually contributing to this growth. So what does e-commerce look like in some of the other markets? So it's exploding in all other markets, which will accelerate digital transformation, including concepts like live streaming. So for example, in the last 3 months, we've had 10 years of growth in the United States in e-commerce. So it's exploded here in this part of the world also, but it has peaked and it actually is already declining. So the growth rates that were through the roof are actually starting to decline both overall and also in the grocery sector. We have started to go back into physical stores, so it is declining. In early October, we actually reached the entire 2019 retail sales online. So, and that's without the holiday season. So this will be a banner year for online, but again, the spikes are declining. And what this really means is that what's happened to retail is that, yes, we've accelerated, but really what we've done is advanced 3 to 5 years to we would have ended up anyway in terms of a balance between what's online and what's offline. So it's an acceleration of trends that were already happening. So that's a little bit about retail and e-commerce. Really what is happening now is important, which is how is the recovery taking place worldwide? And again, we'll get to in terms of how does live streaming play into this. And for that, there's some really good data from Bain & Company in terms of previous crises, not as severe as the one that we're currently going through, but all these crises go through phases. So we go through an outbreak phase, we then start a recovery, and then we stabilize back to a new normal. And as the previous speaker said, it will indeed be a new normal. Now, this pandemic really is harder than the ones that I'm showing here, which were more recent examples from Bain & Company, but we will go through similar types of experiences as we emerge out of this crisis. And just keep in mind, so for example, the pandemic in the 2018, the flu pandemic, that was followed by the Roaring 20s. So we will get through this crisis, but we will come out different. And we'll come out different because retail was already being transformed. And what this crisis has done is accelerated that transformation. And to understand that, let's go back to China for 1 second. China is already back to retail sales post the drop in COVID-19. So they're already above the line, and the line is 2019 levels. So they already have recovered the major drop that they had in February of nearly 12%, and they are now back to positive. And what you see on the right is pictures from China where, for example, shoppers are lined up. And this is, again, while COVID is still going on, but they figured out how to adapt to it. And they're in front of a Chanel store waiting in line to get in. And Chanel is important. That's a strong brand. And then the other picture is actually a restaurant. So they're going back to restaurants. So we will recover. In some parts of the world, it will take longer. This is actually the European curve of recovery. So how fast does Europe recover? The current forecast has Europe recovering to the 2019 levels sometime in the middle of 2022. And some sectors, though, like department stores, especially soft goods and specialty soft goods, and restaurants, as you can see, had a major drop and will recover later, while the food and drug will stay positive throughout the forecast period. So there is good news. We actually come out strong, but it will take time to actually work through to the West in terms of some of this. What does this mean in terms of how we as consumers are adapting, and what are we concerned about as we work through the crisis? And these are some of the trends. So what changes are here to stay? And so, for example, and I'm going to show you multiple views. So, for example, right now we're more concerned about hygiene. In April, we were concerned about hygiene, contactless payments, connecting with friends and family as the top three. The one at the bottom is interesting to me. 47% of us were not going to go to stores anymore. And then if you look at the other side, we're going to save more. We're going to we're going to not travel. We're going to use our car more. We're going to order online. We're going to do schooling at home, and we're going to move out of cities. So those are the trends that were being broadcast in April. These are the trends from September. So as you can see in the middle there, we're starting to feel more comfortable getting into groups, shopping in stores, taking care of ourselves, going out dining, and working in an office. So we're starting to come out of it, but we're not ready to travel. So as you can see at the bottom, only 4% of us really are spending money and trying to figure out how to travel. And that's reflected to what is happening in the industry, in the airline industry. On the right, as you can see, all the trends in terms of looking for, again, digital activities, so contactless, desire for mobile, contactless, check-in option, and expecting real-time updates in terms of how the world is actually responding when we make a purchase. And then finally, looking at consumers in September, the safety factor is not going away because Corona is still with us. And if I look at Europe and some of the key countries there, is starting to come back up again. So really safety has moved to a number 3 purchase driver that actually plays in our mind in terms of when we go shopping. And as you can see, value for money is number 1, ease of buying, and my personal safety are the 2 and 3 in terms of key things that we do. And we're not as worried about branding and customer experiences right now as we will later. And on the right, as you can see, the top 3 are really focused on safety. So as we work through this crisis, safety, again, is very important, which, again, plays back into live streaming, because live streaming is a way to deliver content in retail and get people to buy, which China has figured out very, very successfully. So I cannot leave a forecast or discussion about retail without talking about the holiday season. So the holiday season is coming up. In the United States, so it's already underway. We just had Prime Day, which was successful in the United States with Amazon. Stores are going to be critical, but they're going to act a lot as fulfillment center. Digital is going to be huge, but the growth isn't going to be huge because, again, the balance between the two. One of the challenges we're going to have this year is delivery. There's actually not enough capacity to deliver your goods. So there's potentially 700 million goods or 700 million presents that are not going to get to your home because of these shortages in delivery on time. And then finally on this chart, what's important, again, these new services that have emerged, like buy online, pick up in stores, or BOPIS, they're going to play a heavy role in growth of retail. So digital activities and these types of services, very, very important for the holiday season. So as we move forward, what does digital transformation look like? So some of the 3 things, and I'm only going to focus on the top 3, these are what retailers were focused on during just prior to the pandemic in terms of helping consumers fall in love with their brand. So they were focused on identifying the customer and personalizing customer experiences, empowering associates, so the store people with mobile tools, and then providing different ways for consumers to shop online, to actually align what a consumer is doing, walking in with a smartphone, for example, inside a store, with an associate on the other side. Those are the three critical areas. I'll talk about these at the end, but these critical areas will continue going forward. There has been some realignment because of Corona, and the realignment, for example, is that we're more worried about government relations because the government decided who was essential and not essential. So some countries did a better job at this. So for example, New Zealand did an excellent job. So a broader sector of the retail sector actually remained open versus in the United States, it was just grocery and mass, everybody else closed. So understanding what the government can do, intensifying services, that's the ultimate monetization, doing more social to reach consumers, preserving cash so you actually survive the pandemic, and then figuring out how to get closer. Those are getting attention. And some of the longer term stuff in digital is being postponed, and that's really the stuff that's crossed out. COVID-19 has accelerated all that. So COVID-19, really what this chart shows is that, for example, 91% expect corporate technology adoption to speed up. And as you can see, it's become a catalyst to the business. It's disruptive, and it really changes the roadmap of where retail goes next. And you can see that in the good brands that actually know how to actually do this. And this is where they're spending their focus right now. So it's on product and service digitization, data analytics, supply chain, cloud, artificial intelligence, the Internet of Things, and robots. Those are the technologies that are getting attention right now that will get accelerated because of COVID. So let's talk a little bit in terms of live streaming now, and what does it mean in terms of China, which is the laboratory for me, again, in terms of retail. So live streaming is really one of those at the crossroads of entertainment and shopping. So China has really fine-tuned the formula where you have key opinion leaders that actually, or influencers, that become sellers, and then they heavily leverage digital, especially the smartphone, to engage with their consumers. So for example, in Singles Day, which last year we talked about was 38 billion, 2.9 billion was from live streaming. 100,000 brands were doing it. And even Kim from the West, Kim Kardashian joined in, and in 15 minutes, she sold her entire inventory of 15,000 bottles of perfume. So again, key influencers become very, very important, or key opinion leaders, Kohl's. And then you're actually seeing two here. You see the king of lipstick on the left, Austin Lee. He's become a millionaire because of live streaming. And he's one of his famous activities is actually selling a lot of lipsticks, which, as you can see here, he's within seconds, he can change shades of lipstick, and has sold a lot of lipstick, but he's now a millionaire. And the other one, even bigger millionaire, is Via, the queen of live streams. She sold 400 million plus last year in live streaming of goods. And she's the one that's really high in demand, again, really has become rich because of live streaming. But again, it's that crossroad of entertainment, retail, and digital coming together in terms of engaging products. And I would encourage you to go watch some YouTube videos of how live streaming takes place, where, for example, you see sometimes picture where this individual is actually looking at 40 to 50 smartphones and actually calling out specific frequent shoppers by name. So it's highly entertaining, highly engaging in terms of how the consumer goes. Again, the previous forecast was 129 billion. This is another forecast that shows that this year it's going to be 137 billion. It's actually 4% of online sales, 1% of total retail sales in China right now. Taobao, which is owned by Alibaba, is the market leader in live streaming, followed by Douyin. And Douyin is the equivalent of TikTok to the rest of the world. They have a growing, fast-growing business in live streaming. And the third one is Kuashu. You can see the products that do well in live streaming: female fashion versus e-commerce. You can also male fashion and electronics, but these are the key categories, and beauty that do well in live streaming, at least in China. And you can see the largest audience is female, followed by male, and the top three categories, which are important, because remember what I just said, the hardest hit sector in the West was apparel. Guess what the number one most, I just talked about it, was apparel. Again, here's another chart reinforcing it. Apparel, cosmetics, and food, the top three categories. So those hardest hit sector are the ones that needed it the most. And in China, live streaming is really moving through phases. We already went through phase one, which is the gaming sports. We are finishing up the current phase that you saw here in terms of shopping and e-commerce. We're now getting into a phase in China where everybody's live streaming. So you have farms that live stream their produce. There's an example that it talks about here. Somebody even sold a rocket on live stream for $5.6 million. So there's all kinds of products that are moving to live streaming as a market. So it's becoming ubiquitous, and part to the point that now China is introducing regulations because we're at a point that it actually needs a much bigger legal framework about it. So let me conclude now with some charts in terms of where do we go from here in terms of retail, and what does retail look like in the future. So retail has gone through three phases, and they're all based on information and data. The manufacturers really were in charge of retail prior to the 1970s because they had very efficient production line. The power shifted to retailer when the barcode evolved in the 1970s. And if you go back to the history of Walmart, that's how Walmart became Walmart, because of the barcode and the logistics process that they put behind it. We are in the middle of the third mega trend, which is accelerating dramatically now because of Corona, and that's really the consumer taking control because of the smartphone. So the smartphone has moved the power of retail to the consumer. The speed at which all this is happening is accelerating, and it's being accelerated by two factors. One is connected devices, and two is mobility. And then again, the charts here, you'll see that by 2025, 79% of the world will be on smartphones. There will be 5 billion connections, so a substantial part of the global population will be mobile, and by the way, ready for live streaming commerce. So this is the time to get prepared, because these trends are accelerating how we get connected, how we shop. And then the last chart here shows that because of digital, everything that we do gets accelerated. So this is the time it took to reach 50 million people and 50 million users. You can see the telephone took 75 years. If you go up the food chain, Pokemon was extremely fast. And that lady there, the Chihuahua lady, in 24 hours, she reached 50 million views on her view that she posted about buying a Chihuahua mask. So it gives you an idea of the power of digital and why live streaming is important in this world. Coupled with that is really the millennials. The millennials are much more comfortable with technology, and they're actually now become, at least in the United States, they crossed over to become the largest generation. So they control retail going forward. And as a result, because they are digitally led, they actually are really dictating. All the names you see here are the things that millennials have been accused of killing. So millennials really are killing all kinds of categories like beer, golf, diamonds, because they have their own, they're focused on experiences, and they do, again, very digital focused, savvy consumers going forward. One of the reasons I love retail is because retail is innovative. And again, live streaming is one of those examples of retail being extremely innovative. The reason it's innovative, it's not highly concentrated. So this is a chart that shows that, for example, in the United States, the top 5 only have a 19% share of the entire market versus, for example, mobile, it's 96%. Because of that, there's really a ton of innovation. And so complacency, if you are complacent and you don't innovate, especially in the digital space, you die. And there's a couple of examples here. AMP, which used to be the largest retailer in the United States, the largest supermarket chain, died. Sears, which could have been the next Amazon because it had a huge catalog business, totally missed the window, almost out of business. And then you can see here the importance of branding and really having a strong brand and now linking it to digital being extremely important. So the future of retail is about connecting the physical and the digital, and also having a lot of more services to actually allow the consumers to shop during the pandemic. And a lot of these services will stick. So collect online, and these are different countries around the world. You can see they become very popular. Collect online orders from inside a store. Collect online, collect orders like curbside. So, and the store actually becomes, again, an important fulfillment center for all these services. So stores are not going to go away, but digital plays a big role. One of the dirty secrets is that these services, these new services are very expensive. They actually detract margin. In fact, online orders cost retailers 10 to 15% more than purchases in store. That's why Amazon is opening physical stores. They bought Whole Foods. They're now opening their own physical stores. Just this week, Alibaba took a majority stake in a physical store chain of $6.6 billion in terms of having 500 more stores where they can fulfill digital and also entice consumers to come buy into digital stores. So you will get to this combination of physical and digital, and it's really a balance. That's where we're headed. We're headed to a balance where you're going to have strong brands, and the chart in the middle shows those have done really well. If you are a strong brand, you will grow if you consumers love you, and they've grown 81% in the last 5 years. Or if you're a price-based retailer and everybody knows who you are, so Aldi, Lidl, Walmart, TJ Maxx, you will also have grown, not as much as brands, you will have grown 37%. If you're in the middle, that's where retail is dying. Retail is dying in the middle of the ones that really don't know what they want to be. And the most important person is going to be the store associate going forward in terms of helping that consumer engage, and I'll talk about that. So what does a couple more charts to close? What does the store of the future look like? And this is a chart that represents that. The store of the future is going to have a ton of data being generated from everything you can imagine. So if you're in apparel clothes, because of RFID, even the clothes themselves will generate data. So everything in the store will be censored, data will be collected, it will go to intelligent filters such as computer vision, artificial intelligence, machine learning, big data, and in some parts of the world, even facial recognition is becoming a major filter to figure out the bad guys and the good guys. And then those filters will create these immersive experiences. Everything is targeted at that consumer in the middle. So the consumer in the middle is really the most important person in this shopping journey. And the key is making that consumer a brand ambassador, somebody passionate about your store and your brand. And one of the ways to do that is to have very passionate store associates that are also brand ambassadors. One of the ironies today is that when a consumer walks into a store, he's much more knowledgeable than the store associate that they meet inside that store because of the smartphone. They did all their homework online. They know what they want. The key is to match that digitally and actually have that engagement. And to me, that's why I believe the future will be bright. So this chart summarizes this presentation in terms of the key strategies for retail, which are harmonized channels, frictionless commerce, digitally empowered associates, visibility of inventory across the store, real-time analytics. The key technologies in the mid-term are edge computing, connecting everything, IoT, and computer vision, leading to that immersive experiences and brand ambassador. And closing with live streaming, it is coming to the West. My view is it needs to come faster. It is one of those digital kind of experiences that really bridges that entertainment and fun that millennials are looking for in terms of greater experiences. it is being used. So in Prime Day, which again was this past week, as you can see, successful in terms of growth for Amazon, reaching $6+ billion, and Levi's was actually live streaming their goods during that. There already are projections that live streaming in the United States will generate $25 billion from events by 2023. Amazon, Facebook, and Instagram are looking to launch or testing sites. And my favorite is the quote in the middle from my US participant. It was cool to check out the trends for the fall. I love the styling. It was almost like having a personal shopper. So to me, live streaming needs to go faster because of how digital transformation has accelerated retail. And more importantly, it works best, as China has already proved, in those sectors that are struggling, such as apparel. For example, in China, you see those live streamers changing through all kinds of clothes, like every few minutes, putting on a different outfit and then selling it very actively on live streaming. So it helps sectors transform to the next level. So it is coming to the West. My view, it has to come faster. And with that, I'm going to say thank you, and I will take questions.
Thank you very much, Tony, for these great insights. And yes, we received a couple of questions. Let me maybe start with you used a category or an industry type, maybe in e-commerce, called pure play e-commerce. One of our viewers would like to know, what does pure play e-commerce mean?
So pure play e-commerce are in the companies that are just selling online. And by the way, those are the companies that are actually struggling, and those are the ones that are actually trying to open stores now, because they need store for that balance to offline and online, because again, it's much more profitable to have that physical store as a fulfillment center.
Yeah, we've seen that. In your examples, that's one more question. We've seen a couple, you've shown lipsticks and even rockets, I think, in one example. One of our viewers, Adi, would like to know, can you actually sell everything on live streams? What does China show in this regard?
The answer is yes. So for example, struggling farmers were selling their oranges, their potatoes. Towns, actually physical towns, actually organize live streaming events on behalf of their basically people in their town to actually, again, get their e-commerce going faster. So the answer is you can sell almost anything, provided you make it entertaining and you build an audience. It takes a lot of practice. The live streamers in China work up to 8 hours at times. So this isn't, you do it once and they do a ton of practice. They have a support staff behind them. And if you get big like Via in Austin, it becomes a huge business to itself. I mean, as I said, Via, I think it was $425 million she sold in live stream last year.
Another lady that you just mentioned, and Peter in our audience, would like to know, who is the Chihuahua lady that you mentioned regarding on one of your slides? Maybe we can even go back to that slide.
What was the slide again?
The Chihuahua lady.
Oh, the Chihuahua lady. Okay, go to YouTube, look up Chihuahua lady. It's the most entertaining video that you can see. Let me go back to that slide. So go to YouTube, Google or in YouTube, put in Chihuahua lady.
And she's here on top.
What you'll get back is a video of a lady that just went into a store, and she was so excited about Chihuahua masks that she just bought, she created a YouTube video.
Ah, okay.
And it was so entertaining that went immediately viral. The irony of that video is that she mentions a store, which was Kohl's, and really Kohl's should have jumped on it and really created a buzz around it, and they didn't. So again, it's a missed opportunity, but again, it gives you an idea, because of digital, even the Chihuahua lady can reach millions of people very quickly.
Interesting. We have to check that out. One more question, or a couple of questions, were around sort of one is from Daniel. Do our Western markets now develop in the same trajectory like what we see in China, or what do you observe in this regard? Is it maybe, that's also what Daniel asks, culture specific? Maybe just the Chinese use live streams different than we could do because we have different habits.
So good question. China has some advantages. One of the major advantages is that the ecosystem of live streaming is complete. So for example, Alibaba, their biggest business is actually Alipay. It's the ability to pay digital. They also have an online store. They have a closed ecosystem where the live streaming fits in nicely. That does not a lot exist in the West. So you actually have to create an environment where you have to rely on multiple companies to cooperate with each other. That will take some time to start and actually create in the West. And some of the companies like Amazon and others are trying, but again, they only have a sliver of what's possible to do it. I do think a variation of live streaming will come to the West. It just needs to become faster, because ultimately what it is, it's shopping by entertainment. We have two channels in the United States called QVC and HSN, which are online shopping center. I've seen them in Europe also, where they come on and they put up a product and then talk you to death, and then they put up a counter to show. But that's not fun. That's not engaging. What's different is the engagement with the smartphone. It's the engagement of that key opinion leader actually getting to know their customer, calling out by name, and hey, this deal for you. Also, what's different is that they're able to do instant deals, instant discounts, and actually even specialized discounts for the next 1 minute for the ones that basically get in, and you get that kind of thing. So it's creating that atmosphere and that activity. So I think we have some adaptation to do in the West, but I think it's a perfect way, especially for goods that are mentioned here, like cosmetics, food, apparel, because I think as they do in China, they just change the garment. They even, the sophisticated ones, they almost do like, think of the walks in Paris, where you got all these people ready to come across, you do a sale, and then you do special discounts, you're done, boom, we sold out, and then they move on to the next person. It can be done. China does have some advantage that the US still has some work to do, and even Europe.
When you mentioned this 1 minute discount, I remembered that towards the end of your presentation, you mentioned the importance to move faster when it comes to live streaming. What means faster?
Faster is one of the challenges of smartphones is that our attention span is short. If we don't like what we see, we merely flip to the next thing. So you gotta keep the attention of the user, and the way to keep the attention of the user, you gotta make, and this was said actually by the previous speaker, you gotta make the information engaging. You gotta give reasons to stick to the live stream, and you gotta give them incentives, and that's why the sale and those other things. If you're not, that smartphone makes it very easy to say, I'm bored, on to the next thing.
Exactly. And there was one more question from Adi about now you've shown that China is already recovering a lot of opportunities in China. If companies from outside China now want to start selling to such target groups, what do they have to do? Is it enough just to have a Chinese online shop maybe?
So it takes time to get into the Chinese market, so it's not as easy. But having said that, China is one of the most avid consumers in terms of just buying all kinds of things. You can see that from example, the high fashion brands and the luxury brands. That's the key market. If they don't succeed in China, they struggle for the rest of the world. So, but they've been building some time. The key is to build a brand and an audience, and that sometimes take time depending on the product. So, but that everything, that's what I've done with my social media activities. I'm an overnight success with 165,000 people that follow me on LinkedIn, but that took years of building content and actually really generating content that the users like and give me feedback in terms of what's working, not working. It's the same with anything. You need to create an audience with a strong brand and then make that experience immersive enough that they'll stick with you, and more importantly, to social media, recommend to come to your site to buy.
Are you also using some of the Chinese social networks, WeChat, Weibo, for example?
Yeah, and in fact, that's a very good point. And in fact, that is the way that Alibaba is already in 200 countries. So they're also coming the other way. So Alibaba is in the process of hiring, I think, 100,000 live streamers. And they're also teaching different parts of the world how to do it. So right now they're focusing on Southeast Asia. There's also some action taking place in Eastern Europe. And it's actually Alibaba teaching the world how to get on live streaming for retail and how to take their model that they made successful in their part of the world to other parts of the world. So I fully would expect that Alibaba and JD.com have global ambition. So you'll be hearing a lot more of that.
Yeah, so as you described, it's really a laboratory, a very interesting laboratory. There was a question about TikTok. Do you think that TikTok will survive the whole privacy troubles they have, particularly in the US at the moment?
I think TikTok survives because it's an entertainment 15-second video kind of a platform, which, by the way, as I said earlier, it's not here in China. It's already has a growing live stream business. So I think it survived. Why do I think it survived? Because video is the most important platform for everything going forward. We are past text, we are past email, video, and the ability to generate content via video. It's why I moved to a YouTube channel. I've started podcasts and all those other types of activities because we like to see things, and more importantly, we like to see short and concrete things, and right now TikTok delivers that. Does it survive exactly as it is today because of some of the other concerns? Does it become a U.S. company and not a Chinese company?
Yeah,
which are some
exactly.
of the discussion. But the concept itself survives.
Yeah. Tim would like to know, we see all these developments in China. Maybe we can see a lot of positive aspects. Does China at some point also scare you?
So yes, indeed. So China also has the largest deployments of cameras per person. So there is one camera for every 4.1 people. So you think about 1.4 billion people that are in China, and it tells you how many cameras. So they've deployed this digital network, and by the way, it includes facial recognition. And they actually give a social score to each Chinese citizen, and that social score allows you to travel, allows you basically access to different things. So that's an extreme that I hope the West never sees. So there are things that scare me in China, but there are also very good examples that you don't have to exactly adopt the Chinese model. You can learn from the Chinese model and then make it a Western experience. And that's really what I've been doing. To me, the idea that they have 800 million people on mobile pay, and in the United States, we have a huge retailer called CVS in the drugstore that's just getting ready to test it. That's like, when is the world going to catch up? Why have we moved on to that next level? So there are good examples, but there's also places we don't want to go. So the idea is to observe and import to where you think are the best practices that the West will accept.
Exactly. And one more question about the more maybe negative aspect as coming from Bernard. He would like to know whether online sales always means tons of returns. You know, you mentioned all these Christmas presents that might not arrive, and online sales, of course, accelerates this chaos maybe. What do you think about this aspect?
So again, that's the dirty little secret. Now, online is very expensive. Amazon, for example, their return costs are equivalent to all of Starbucks' revenue. So it gives you an idea how much they have to spend to return goods. 50% of apparel goods, up to 50% of apparel goods are returned. So a couple things. One, we got to get better in apparel and sizing. So again, digital needs to step up, and there are companies working on this. I actually advised a couple in Silicon Valley that are trying to create smartphone apps where you stand in front of the smartphone and it actually figures out your size, so you can actually order the right size. So we have some work to do, because again, the reason there's a rush of pure play online to get to physical is because it's not that really profitable to just do online. I'll give you another example. Amazon makes 70% of their profit from their web services, so from their cloud business.
Yeah,
they
hosting,
make
for
very little
example.
profit from those billions of products they sell you online. So again, the world's going to change, but we need more areas like in apparel to help us digitally.
I think the world is going to change is a very good statement, and a very good maybe something we can keep in mind among many other inspirational ideas and insights from you, Tony, in this session. Many thanks for your time.
Thank you very much, and I really enjoyed being with you. So I really appreciate this opportunity to learn from the Europeans. So thank you.